Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Team Evangelical Dark Web is back for another live stream on a Thursday evening. And we're going to be talking about Christ or chaos. This is a bit of a big topic right now in conservatism in America for sure. And we're just going to be asking, can Christians defeat conservative Inc.? Because I think there's a clear faction between people who want conservatism to represent biblical values and people who want a big tent opposition. And there's a clear divide going on in the movement, and nothing really exemplified that as much as the Dave Rubin announcement. So Dave Rubin announced last week that he was going to be doing the whole sperm baby thing with his with a surrogate, and then his butt buddy is also going to be doing that as well, because that is a very trendy thing in the gay community, is for two men to both have surrogates at the same time, because they don't want, it's not enough for one person to have the legitimate, or one person to have the child, I guess, and to share that. They each have to have their own, because I guess they're not super committed together to parenting. But that's a bit of a digression, I suppose. But
I think it's more genetic claim.
But the idea that, it's such a loving relationship that they can't share the genetic claim, I don't know. But it just makes you think. But anyway, about the level of commitment. But anyway, you wrote the article kind of responding to that, and you actually took it a little bit deeper to talk about the ethics of in vitro fertilization and the ethics of surrogacy in general. So why don't you expound upon that?
Yeah, because one thing I noticed is that I don't think a lot of Christians even know what this topic even is, what kind of goes behind the scenes in this type of thing. Because you kind of hear about, and the reason I titled it Dave Rubin and Kanye West is because before Rubin, Kanye West was probably the most prominent figure in American celebrity culture to have engaged in, I guess, surrogacy, because I think his third child, and I presume his fourth as well, was surrogate. And I think before that they used in vitro fertilization because Kim Kardashian has a medical problem.
She's also pretty old.
Yeah, that too. But so you
for
have
childbearing, that is.
So you have two two factors working against you with if you're trying to conceive and have a family. So that was one of the that's the most prominent after that. But other than Kanye and Kim having a baby, it's you don't really hear about it a whole lot until, of course, Dave Rubin did it. And of course, him being in a male partnership with someone else kind of exaggerate, or kind of adds a double whammy to this issue. But again, a lot of Christians don't even know what even happens and the link between surrogacy, in vitro fertilization, and abortion. Because again, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio where you think, oh, you make a baby in a test tube and then you insert it into the uterus. And it's actually, you make several babies in test tubes and then you insert one of them into the uterus, and then you have to do something with the excess. And generally speaking, they dispose of the excess. So that is one of the, I guess, the scientific community would call it an ethical concern. I mean, obviously the Christian community should be very outspoken against this type of practice, and that's something that needs to kind of, I guess, be highlighted and articulated. And again, it's not even an overly complicated issue. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. The same arguments against abortion can then be utilized in this, and then you can even add to it God's plan, circumventing God's plan for family building, which I use Genesis 16:4 with Abraham and Sarah conceiving and Ishmael. So that would be a primary example of using surrogacy in probably a more legitimate way than what.
Oh, so Abraham using Hagar, so to speak?
Yes, the Abraham and Hagar situation. And really, one thing I kind of outline is him sending away, or him allowing his wife to send away his, I guess, servant and his son, who's technically, culturally might be viewed as his firstborn heir, even though he's not the child of promise. like that would probably be seen as very shameful even in their culture. So it's kind of like not only did you do this, then you try to send the baby away, or send the, I guess, the 13-year-old child away. So I mean, but again, that's even when someone like Abraham should have actually been protecting his son and his servant. But
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much of the issue of IVF connects to Genesis 16, right? But one thing is clear, that you create a bunch of human life and then dispose of it, and it's the majority too. So it's like you had the one person that's successfully in I don't want to say conceived, because they're all conceived, but implanted, is that the word, uh into the uterus, and that person is like the champion at the expense of the rest. And that's kind of an ugly picture that we don't really think about when it comes to this industry. And I think one of the reasons why Christians don't think about this industry or think about IVF as an issue, I mean, the Catholic Church, to their credit, they have a solidified theology on this. The problem that Protestants have is, first of all, we're not in the ivory towers able to really afford this practice, or much less, it's not facing us in everyday life. We have critical race theory in everyday life. We have the grooming in public schools to deal with in everyday life, and we have like Democrats everywhere. So we don't have the luxury of really debating surrogacy as a practice as much. But because it's expensive, it's not in your
high end.
reach, it's very high end. So obviously that's probably part of the reason why Protestants don't really have a well thought out theology on this. But when you point out the fact that, yeah, it's basically you're basically creating a bunch of human life that you will then dispose of. And I guess we could talk about when ensoulment, I believe is the word, happens, whether it happens after implantation or upon conception. Either way, it doesn't make much of a difference in the debate on terminating in an unborn child. It doesn't really weigh into that debate much at all, because by the time you would do so, you would have already had that. But surrogacy is probably the only area where you can maybe make a distinction. But even then, I just don't feel, again, we generally believe as Christians that life begins at conception. So when you're conceiving several life forms, you're conceiving several human DNAs together. You just created human life, and several of it that you then waste. So,
Pretty much, it gets treated like normal medical waste. I guess the majority of the time, and then they might keep certain things in storage, but they tend to make the disposal situation rather quick, because I think it said 6 days was the average length.
Okay, so and since we have a chat going on, definitely send your comments into the chat, because I like chat. I like chat a lot and always interact with the chat. And just keep the conversation going. I did actually prepare for this live stream. I do have some questions floated, and I haven't asked any of those questions yet. So, but any questions are welcome in the chat as well. So obviously, what are the other issues, other ethical concerns associated with surrogacy and IVF?
I mean, I briefly touched on it. I mean, I tried to keep the argument, or the argument simple, and just do like 2 points that are more secular, because again, the same arguments against abortion apply. I then talk about the health of the mother, because again, these are higher risk pregnancies, generally speaking. So you are increasing the chance of what's called an epotic. Let me actually read the word.
Yeah, that's where it does not implant in the uterus.
Ectopic.
That's pregnancy. Where it does not implant in the uterus.
Yes, it goes into the fallopian tubes, which is not good, and that generally will require some form of abortion, or it will immediately proceed to a miscarriage, because again, it's
it's not sustainable.
Yeah, it's not a sustainable. I guess the zygote is not in the proper place. So that's one risk, and that is about 2 to 5% of the time. Which, to give you a perspective, that's 1 in 20 roughly 1 in 20 is
Right, and how I don't know what
going to
the
experience that.
ectopic pregnancy rate is normally.
Yeah, I don't know what the normal is, but I don't imagine it's as high. Well, I don't think it's nearly as high. But again, when you're forcing something like a foreign entity into a body, kind of like an organ or anything else, it has to match. The body has to accept it, and that's one thing that could actually, like, you could trigger like some form of an immune reaction if the body does not accept the foreign genetic material that's being inserted into it. So that is one thing to bear in mind. Obviously, like increase premature birth, miscarriage, um, yeah, birth defects, which is more stratified with older women. Which again, that would be the case with any sort of natural conception, but obviously with when you're doing it artificially, then again those risks are going up.
Got a question from the chat to you guys. Is this practice a little bit closer to playing God with human life? It is to me, and certainly once you learn more about how the sausage is made, it definitely realms into playing God territory. Like once you learn what the industry is, how it exactly operates, it definitely becomes that way, especially since it's very easy to get into the whole test tube babies of let's have designer babies.
Well, I mean that's kind of even what happened here with Ruben, because he
Oh, really?
him and him and his male lover decided we're
I think
gonna,
his name is Dave
yeah,
or
it's like
David
Dave
or
and
something
David,
like.
but
Yeah, it's really gay.
the two of them decided to seek out egg donors. So they chose a singular egg donor so that the children, the offspring, would have like some form of a connection, being I guess half brothers or whatever. So that was one thing they did. Then they decided to seek out two different surrogates. So separate eggs, separate womb. So they are choosing they are choosing the design as far as the genetics of the mother, and so forth. Again, that goes beyond even what like Abraham did, where I guess what was she Egyptian, so mixing a little of that. But again, you're mixing and matching what you want, kind of like a Tinder profile, except you have your Tinder for your egg donors, and then you have your Tinder for your surrogate. So there is a lot of like choice going on there, and that's without using like CRISPR or gene splicing, which I don't know how developed that technology is, but I imagine again you have scientists somewhere doing it.
It's in like several prominent sci-fis. So, and that's kind of where we're realming into. It's just that, usually a lot of technological advancements are made to like further debase sexual desires. For instance, for this in this case, it's allow two men playing house to have a baby, or in this case, they each get their own baby to raise at once in parallel t- to each other. Um, but in other cases, we're seeing like the stuff with the metaverse come out, and it's like they're really just designing sex suits for the metaverse thing. So, that's kind of what
I
fuels.
mean, the sex robot was a good Bill Burr bit as
But other
far.
than that, oh yeah, I think I remember that bit. But
So I mean,
yeah, it's that's going to advance robotics and stuff like that. So it's kind of a shame, but that's where we are as humans. So obviously, when Dave Rubin made that announcement, there was a lot of names that came out in support. Who is the biggest disappointment to you on the people that came out to support Dave Rubin? I got an answer for
um,
this. Do you?
dang. Let's see.
I mean, to me, the easy answer is Sarah Gonzalez, because Sarah Gonzalez is highly based on anything related to Branch Covidianism. She was highly based on that. And again, she claims to be a Christian as well, from what I can tell.
Which
And
is
for
weird
her,
because
yeah,
just seeing her when she was on like You Are Here with Sarah with Sydney
Sydney
Watson. I
Watson.
mean, she kind of came across as like nominally Christian or agnostic. That's how I saw her. So I wasn't surprised when I saw her do it just after
Okay.
watching her as a guest on someone else's program where
It's a
religious
little bit
subject
more,
matter
yeah,
came up.
okay.
So
Okay,
that
so maybe I overestimated her religious commitment, but uh
No,
Sarah Gonzalez is a
hosts
Blaze
on.
TV panelist and figure. So I was actually most surprised by her because again, she was very based on the issue of Branch Covidianism. So when she also, because who wasn't based on the issue of Branch Covidianism? Dave Rubin. So Dave Rubin was a hardcore panic porn peddler.
Yeah, he would
And
have this. I want to say he had like a doctor on in like March 30th. I looked at his stuff. It's just like the guy. I think the guy was just shy of saying that China had the right response, shutting everything down. Like again, he had someone hardcore pushing lockdowns on this, on COVID, and then he has some economist dude that's, I guess, I don't know, defending, I guess, Trump's industrialization methods, which didn't work as far as like having car companies build ventilators instead of vehicles. Um,
yeah, that definitely actually screwed us up a lot, didn't it? If you think about it, with the whole supply chain issues, because all those companies went to producing masks and ventilators that we didn't really need. Now, did we? So
so
I thought Sarah Gonzalez was the biggest disappointment, but maybe I just didn't know enough about her because, again, anytime I see her, I don't watch her actual show on Blaze, but when she's a guest on other people's shows, she brings it.
Tyler Cardin kind of was a shocker for me.
He's the Blaze TV CEO or the Blaze
Yes.
or Blaze
Yeah,
CEO.
yeah. I mean, his Twitter is like Tyler Carditis or something. So I guess I thought that people at the top of Blaze were more, I guess, evangelical would be the right term. Because
Uh,
I know, obviously, Glenn Beck being Mormon, I wasn't kind of shocked, even though he was congratulatory as well.
yeah, but Mormons are actually increasingly pro-gay. A
Yeah, that
lot
is
more.
true.
So, obviously, we're getting some discussion about Dave Rubin's actual positions, and we'll actually get into that a little bit in the next question that I actually have written down. But as far as the people that at Blaze TV that actually stood against it, because as far as I know, like uh, PragerU was very pro, but because PragerU, we'll talk about PragerU conservatism and what that means.
Mm.
So they were not surprising. I didn't see too many Daily Wire personalities really comment on
No,
it.
I didn't see any.
Uh,
They, for the most part, kept it
in
quiet.
house, yeah, because
Um,
Daily Wire is a little bit more petty about competition and stuff like that. From my observation, whereas Blaze TV is like everyone on everyone. Uh, so, but obviously at Blaze TV, which is which is where Dave Rubin hosts his podcast and stuff like that. We had Steve Dace, Ali Stuckey, uh, Jason Whitlock, and
Jason
Delana
Whitlock
Squires.
did come out against it.
Yes, were the four people that said we're not going to congratulate this, or at least the four people. They were, they were among the four major figures that came out against that. And Ali Stuckey brought up the IVF argument as well, being an unethical practice. So again, there are some good conservatives at Blaze TV and good Christians at Blaze TV also, even if they're not like all super solid theologically. Uh, yeah, I still think that they have credible professions of faith, and I think that applies to the aforementioned names, some of which are theologically solid. Like I think Ali Stuckey is theologically solid. So, did you see Milo Yiannopoulos? I don't know how to pronounce that name's response to Dave Rubin's
No,
announcement. I did not see that because I don't follow anything to do with that grifter. Because
let
he is a
me.
grifter and church militant. If they got pretty exposed last year when they were selling like Bible tapes of him reading Psalms or something like that, which is just cringe. I don't know what he sounds like, but I imagine since he used to be a homo,
I'm
I
seeing if I
don't think
can.
that I'd want to listen to his voice read the Bible. But that's just a stereotype. I don't know what he sounds like.
I'm gonna see if I can find it on.
So I don't actually know. You can just let
Oh
us know
dang!
in the
He says
chat.
continues to call for Dave Rubin to be put to death because Rubin and his husband are expecting children. Dave Rubin is why I support the death penalty for unrepentant sodomites. Wow, he went off. He went pretty hard, which
That's
um,
wild. So
it's a hard
I'm
stance for someone that was formerly.
yeah, that is a lot stronger of a stance than I was anticipating. So Dave Rubin is obviously pro-abortion. So, and the fact that he's on the Blaze, despite being pro-abortion, he is pro-abortion. Uh, Obviously, it begs the question of why is he a thing in conservative media?
Well, I mean, I think conservatives, particularly the algorithm ones, the more I guess socially liberal ones, they want to attract, I guess, social classical liberals or whatever on the left. They want the party to be more like this, to be more moderate, believing the Big Ten ideology narrative. I kind of discussed this in a previous article on response to Douglas Murray, where he kind of says why the right is so unattractive. Murray posited that the sexual ethics that social conservatives, particularly that of the Christian bent, try to push onto society is why they're unpopular, which I contend it's the exact opposite. Um, but I think you have a lot of the elements like you're going to have a disproportionate amount of homosexual conservatives in media versus when you compare it to in the normal everyday base. So you have a disproportionate number of like socially liberal people on the right that are in these media centers, in media, in politics, with big names, big platforms.
But
So
here's the thing about Dave Rubin is he never built a platform in conservatism.
no,
He was
he
a
was at the Young
comedian.
Turks.
He was a comedian. Then I guess when comedy stopped working out for him, he went into being a talk show host and stuff like that. And then his views suddenly change. And if you think about it, he's still not a conservative. And I don't even think he's talented either. He is not good at the job. And anytime I listen to him, he's very vacuous. He is a nice guy and has a large enough platform to bring on big names. But other than that, there is no there. There is nothing going on. He has no original thoughts, no real original commentary. He just says what's acceptable, or he says what actual conservatives were saying at least 2 years ago. That's Dave Rubin in a nutshell. So I don't get the appeal. I really don't.
I mean, I just think it's they want to have like token gay conservative Dave Rubin, token trans Blair White,
It
token
was
black
actually
insert someone here.
the only Dave Rubin show I've ever watched was when he had Candace Owens and Blair White in a face-off, and kind of understood why he was gay at that moment. But that's how cringe that experience was. But it was a little wild because it's like, Candace Owens, in my opinion, has improved over the years. Like, she started off as a shameless grifter. Like, she is someone that didn't really have that much talent, was going for internet fame, accidentally stumbled into it. She was a victim of a hate crime when she was younger or something like that. Then she tried to start social autopsy. And then you see on the Breitbart comments section where they're just trashing her one day, and then the next day they're very sympathetic towards her because she got in bed with the Gamergate people and they burned her. And those people are even worse than she was. So that's where she kind of came in, and that's where she fell into a conservative audience, was that. But I do believe she has actually accumulated a monicum of actual conservatism. So,
In
but
many
Dave
ways,
Rubin really hasn't. He's kind of made a career off of being, oh, I'm on the fence, I'm the reasonable one. I left the left. The left really left me though. And it's like, you haven't really left the left.
I mean, it's kind of
You're
just
just
like, yeah,
slow.
I supported a movement, and then the movement, when it proceeded down its logical pathway, it exceeded what I thought it would do. It's just like, no, I mean, when you're tugging on the rope and the rope goes behind you, um, that's what you did. Like that was your doing. It's the same thing with like a Bill Maher. I think the same mindset that wants to promote Dave Rubin's the same one is the same mindset that always wants to use Bill Maher click servitism. Got to react to everything Bill Maher says, even though he doesn't get 2 million viewers on HBO. I mean,
Yeah, I don't see the need to highlight Bill Maher. Like, it doesn't serve us any good. He has an audience, but his audience, again, it's people that just won't vote for us anyway. So I don't really see the point in highlighting Bill Maher or even Dave Rubin, and because Dave Rubin's just not as smart as Bill Maher. Bill Maher, I think, is more of a coward because he might actually believe things, or he's too cowardly to go to the logical conclusion of the positions he's taken up. So there's that going on. There was another name I wanted to bring up, but I've just forgotten because, yeah, you mentioned Bill Maher, which totally got me forgetting the other name that I
Well,
wanted to bring up.
this is a good quote from, I guess, the Douglas Murray article, where I'm just like, just because Bill Maher demonstrates some degree of introspection on the left does not discount his ideological alignment with them. At the same time, Maher can be substituted for Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, Elon Musk, and the logic follows the same.
Okay, the other name I remember the other name I wanted to bring up, and that was J.K. Rowling. So J.K. Rowling is being
Same
hailed
thing.
as a hero on the right, despite the fact that she supported the exact thing that's being used to string her up. So she built the entire hanging platform that's being used against her, and she wants to claim that she's a victim, even though this is the logical conclusion of feminism. We're trying to act like that this whole transgenderism movement is not the logical conclusion of feminism, and it simply is. It is. It was all about deconstructing what it means to be a man. It's all about deconstructing what it means to be a woman. It's all about deconstructing those things, making them interchangeable, making everyone a second-rate male or a second-rate woman,
androgenizing
women and effeminizing men. That has been the entire trajectory of the movement. So it's just like J.K. Rowling's not on our side, and she should not be seen as a hero. She should be seen we should be mocking her as, you built this hanging noose.
And she retroactively made Dumbledore homosexual and wrote a Fantastic Beasts series to justify that and make Magic Hitler as well, because that's all Grindelwald is.
Yeah, if you think about it, again, that just proves the point. She is being hung by this very noose hanging gallows that she built because she did retroactively make Dumbledore a homo, which actually makes the reading of Harry Potter really different if you apply that retroactive fix to and then reread Harry Potter. It changes a lot of those scenes to be a lot creepier than they would have been otherwise. Let's just leave it at that. Like, Dumbledore, it makes Dumbledore seem like he's in love with Harry if you retcon him into being a homosexual. Then it makes him seem like he's professing a sexual love for Harry, but does not act on it because he's a minor attracted person.
Been too long for me since I read it.
No, like it's in the 5th or 6th book where he's professing love.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's creepy. And if you retcon Dumbledore like that, it changes the entire meaning. It changes the entire tone and appropriateness of that scene. It does. So obviously, we touched on, like, what positions can you not hold? What positions can you hold that makes you outside of being even under the umbrella as wide as it is as being called a conservative? Like,
I mean, I guess,
is there a list of positions?
I mean, the first one would have to be abortion. First and foremost.
That's number one. And guess
again,
who's not on our side on that issue is Dave Rubin.
And I guess before anyone drops like a Trump, I guess supporting abortion, or I guess being against abortion with certain exceptions. I mean, from a transactional standpoint, he was still probably the most pro-life president, maybe. Well, I guess we'll see how pro-life his decisions were, but from a functional standpoint.
We'll see whether Neil Gorsuch will go full Episcopalian in supporting the pro-abortion side of the lawsuit before the Supreme Court. I would also, now this is a more interesting nuance because obviously transgenderism, it just shows that, if you support so many people who don't support this now will support this in the next 5 years. It's the same thing. We already saw that with homosexuality, where conservatives were against that until they were for it, and that's why we're having this debate of Christ or this discussion. It's not really a debate about Christ or chaos. Are we just going to be for the things that we were against now in 5 years? So that's really what we're saying. Like, what positions are we not going to move on? And to me, if we move on this, there's no movement left. If we move on the transgenderism thing, there is no movement left. And you see so many people in high conservative circles already bending on this. I did an entire video and article last year about diagramming which conservative publications use preferred pronouns on the Rachel Levine thing, or Richard Levine, or Dick Levine.
And you said Blaze News was
all day long. It might depend on the writer.
Yeah.
But Dave Urbinski, who's one of their main writers and still one of their main writers, and he's very much a Branch Covidian as well. Like, so I don't think he's a conservative at all otherwise, but he was hardcore about it. Daily Wire hides it behind a paywall for plausible deniability and algorithms, so they're at least better about it. There was a Christian Post article that did really well, but Christian Post, they are full neocon. They're full neocon. I might have to do that video later. So I mean, transgenderism is the last line. Like, what's after that? Because it's a movement that's, well, homosexuality as well, deeply tied to the issues of pedophilia. So there's not much. What comes after this? Because already I would imagine I just answered. Yeah. But
the P as the they're trying to add to the
I'm not sure modern conservatism is going to make it. They won't take any real stances. They're too afraid of Dems in the media. Now, I think that used to be true, but we are seeing substantive pushback against this by conservatives. Not all Republicans are really on board with this. We just saw 2 Republican governors veto legislation that would protect women's sports. And just to be clear, and I want the liberals in the audience to know what I'm talking about when I say this, is like, this issue is not about women's sports. It is a proxy for this issue of transgenderism. It is a proxy issue for the truth that is a man cannot turn into a woman.
Well, the irony is the same. Like, literally, if you look at the leftist media talk about whether it's the bill in Florida or the Idaho genital mutilation bill that's being proposed and might get buried, or just anything that's happening in Texas, like Texas executive orders, their reactions are the exact same. They will post the exact same reactions on how, it hurts mental health, blah, 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 blah. And the 3 groups they'll use are APA, Trevor's Project, and I guess maybe the Human Rights Campaign, and maybe the ACLU, but they'll use the same 4 or 5, activist groups to make their point. But they're saying the exact same case. Never mind, and it's always, it hurts the mental health.
Hello?
When you're promoting people onto a pathway that will elevate their mental health risk, instead of attempting to prevent them from going on such a path that would negatively risk their mental health. I mean, again, it's the same thing with
there is nothing loving about what these governors or what these liberals are trying to do. And I think I might want to reclaim the word liberal to mean, like, I don't know. I kind of question whether we should continue using the word leftist and not just return it to liberal, because I want people to be branded. Like, I want people to brand liberalism, because liberalism leads to leftism. So why not just lump it all in? It also keeps discussing the whole church, ecclesiastical, they're theological liberals and then political left. No, they're just liberals because they're all liberals. So I think we could kind of reclaim the word liberal, because I think the idea of using leftist, which I've used several times, so I'm kind of saying that we should probably reclaim the word liberal to mean this communism that's going on in our country, because I
I
don't know.
mean, nothing
So
wrong with
Tommy
him.
Lahren is another good example of someone who, yeah, and when she came out as pro-abortion, she got railed by conservatives, and this happened like 2017, 2018, around that time. I remember that. And she's basically discredited. What does she do now? She's basically on Fox Nation, which is their failed podcast platform, their failed attempt to compete with Blaze. And obviously Fox News is completely on the conservative Inc. side. They are the OGs of conservative Inc. So, just to go back to the discussion topic, so they're the OGs of conservative Inc. And they for the longest time they were the ESPN, sort of like the highlight of being in the conservative media industry. Like that was where you wanted to be. That was, you died in, I don't know, town hall, and you woke up and went to heaven, and that heaven was Fox News. That's what the conservative media used to be like. So it's interesting because they never really, who have their longtime figures been? Bill O'Reilly, who's not really a conservative, Sean Hannity, who's a Republican talking point regurgitator, and what's so special about Greta Van Susteren? Just thinking about their longtime names. But then you got Tucker Carlson, who actually seems to be the first person at Fox News that seems to, I don't know how much he believes what he says he believes, but here's the thing. I think Tucker Carlson's very smart. He sees what works at the podcast level and then brings it on to a national audience, and he knows how to do it. And Tucker Carlson is definitely an example of someone who's changed views a lot over the years. But I think, again, there is room for that in this movement. There is room for that in this movement.
Well, I guess the
So,
big difference is: are you changing your views? Are you like, it's one thing to like, be the ex-gay, and then 10 years later you're like a person in conservative media, doing the thing. It's another if you're like in the media, in the zone, you're like within the circle, and then you have an abortion, or or you pull a Dave Rubin.
I got there's a article that I was thinking about writing that I just found out right before this stream. The lieutenant governor of North Carolina, who is based, by the way, Mark Robertson or Robinson, uh,
Robinson.
he is based, by the way, but he told a story about how he paid for his wife to have an abortion. Like this was before he was a Christian, like over 10 years ago. So he came out and said that. I'm like, wow. And he talked about how he was wrong and how he's repented from that. So I just thought that was a pretty amazing thing. But obviously, he wasn't a conservative at that time, and that's part of his story. That's part of his faith story, is that he actually went through with that. He went through that act and came out and knew it was wrong and repented for it, and has been an extremely based lieutenant governor in North Carolina. So
But I mean,
there
there's
is room
that's
for actually changing your position. And I don't know where he was at career wise at that time, but there is so much parallel between conservatism and Christianity that it's not funny, because, the major parallel being no one tries to infiltrate the left to bring it to the right. No one's doing that whatsoever. No one's trying to infiltrate synagogues or mosques and make them more Muslim or something like that. No one's doing that. But people do infiltrate churches to make them theologically liberal and askew, and to teach heresy and stuff like that. There's infiltrators that want to subvert us, and that's the same thing with the conservatism that does not exist in the Democratic Party, that does not exist in their media either. So it's just something to note. And the other thing, this is where I was going with this, is that we have people that have no other talent. So Tommy Lahren, if she could not be a talk show or podcaster or social media pundit, what could she be doing right now? If Dave Rubin could not be hosting a podcast, what could he be doing right now?
he's got a $1 million house, so he's got
Oh
money.
wait, he could be running locals, which kind of sucks.
Well, he sold that.
Oh, he sold that.
The Rumble.
Oh, he sold that to Rumble. Rumble, which also sucks. Yeah. So failed tech companies. Oh wait, isn't he the one with ThinkSpot, which is like a
No, I thought that was
Jordan Peterson?
yeah, I thought that
I
was
thought
just
someone
him.
else was in on that. I thought so, which also is just a Jordan Peterson fan club, so it sucks. So, yeah. So, in the parallel with the church here is that there are so many pastors that suck, but they have no other skill. They could not make it in the private market, which is why you see like some ridiculous examples where someone cheats on their wife and they get a rehabilitation program, which lasts like 6 weeks, maybe longer, or there's someone like a Joshua Harris who deconstructs his faith and then has to go, he grifted Christianity for 20 plus years or whatever, and now is grifting entrepreneurs out of their startup money and startup capital to be a therapist for entrepreneurs who don't need it. So you have a bunch of people that have no tangible skills who change positions or get revealed as never really having any positions. They can't leave that industry.
No, I
So
think
they won't.
probably the latter, where they don't. In the media, would probably be the latter. They don't really have any positions, which is why they are able to rise through the ranks. If you look at the current Democratic Party, they have no bench because everyone's just kind of saying the it thing to rise through the ranks, gain prominence, and thus you end up with a demented president and a first lady who's or a vice president whose claim to fame was Willie Brown. That's what happens when you don't have actual positions, don't have actual talent. You just are a mouthpiece and you're malleable.
The funny thing is the Gen X Democrats are exceedingly like that. They really have no positions. The Gen X Democrats. So your Kamala Harris, your Kirsten Gillibrand, they're so unprincipled. They will just say whatever they need to say to get on with life. So, and whereas the boomer Democrats are either like politically savvy or they're the ideologues, like a Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or
Pelosi.
Pelosi. She is a political, but she's also highly left, or she's highly liberal too.
Yeah.
But she just knows how to wield a whip. So, but those Gen X Democrats just don't care. They just want to be there. They're just happy to go along with the ride. And then you got the millennial Democrats who are hardcore. Kind of an interesting note. I don't know if there's a parallel in conservatism. We have the boomer cons who are extremely well-meaning, but they don't quite understand everything. And I think Trump definitely falls into that category a lot. You had the Gen X, who's probably the most conservative generation. They're the politicians that are actually getting things done. So you're Ron DeSantis, for example. But there's a lot of bad Republicans that are also Gen X. But the boomer Republicans are definitely the worst in office. That is not the outside of office, but the Republicans that are the boomer generation in office are definitely like your typical rhinos and stuff like that. Whereas millennials, you are seeing some good ones and then some Crenshaw or other ones like that. So I don't know. There's not as much. And then Gen Z, the conservatives from Gen Z are coming out based. So, and they're just trashing attempts to moderatize Republicans.
If you think about it, Republicans kind of have this tier where like Fox News is your most, centrist of the news organizations that caters to boomers. Then you have more like Daily Wire and Blaze, which are catering to like Gen X, millennial, and they're the ones that are really grabbing a lot of those Gen Zers as well. So it is kind of like a trickle down where as you go right on the media spectrum, that's where your audience, that's where your younger viewers are going. So it's kind of like, Fox News being old, like too old school, killed its, I guess, customer acquisition, so to speak, because their average viewer is like 63. So you actually end up with a more, I guess, conservative or even right-leaning party or demographics, because the news that they're competing is has drifted to the right.
So this is where I want to discuss like the elevation by conservatives of non-conservatives. So obviously Dave Rubin would fall into this category, but I think a lot of even libertarian voices perhaps may fall into this category as well.
Yeah, like Rubin, Maher, Musk.
Joe Rogan as
Yeah, Joe
well.
Rogan. But I mean, difference being with Joe Rogan is he gets 20 million viewers, so that's one thing that separates him from some of the other guys is what happens on his show. People are watching.
It actually matters, and Joe Rogan's audience is stoners, MMA lovers, so a lot of urban males. So he has a very grassroots audience.
And if you're looking at 18 to 35-year-old males, yeah, that's like your target audience for any product. Certainly, any media content. That's the market you want. So,
But I kind of wonder on the right, should we have a system of so in the Bible we see that Paul, after having his road to Damascus moment, is put on ice in Antioch for a number of years before he's actually entrusted to go on a mission to preach to the Gentiles. We see
so
that
like
he was put on ice to vet that he actually believed and that his profession of faith was credible. And obviously, I don't see the conservative movement does not do that at all. If someone just says, I left the left, they just get immediately vaulted into some sort of fame or celebrity like Glenn Greenwald, to bring up another name that's, because I don't want to keep circling back to Dave Rubin. He's definitely an example of this, but like Glenn Greenwald, who are the other people at PragerU, J.K. Rowling to some extent.
I mean, I
So
think it's kind of impossible because the people that run these media companies are more socially liberal. So you're not going to have the probation period because who's the gatekeepers of the media is these people, and they're disproportionately more socially liberal than the base conservative than their base conservative audience.
And
So
it's
that's
very funny because we talked about like Christian Post, which is supposedly the most mainstream Christian online news gathering organization, and their comment section is extremely
they're and it's
liberal.
not like atheist trolls. It's like actual people that claim they're Christians.
And they're extremely liberal in that comment section. And I kind of wonder, like, because there's probably a corporate divide between liberal and conservative, or neocon, I should say, at Christian Post, but it's, but their audience skews heavy to the liberal side, which is very interesting. I just thought that was interesting. But for things like the Blaze, entities like the Blaze, or even Daily Wire, do you think that they are more or less conservative than their audience?
I mean, I would certainly, I would lean less. I mean, I would
Or do
generally
you want to itemize it
lean.
between Blaze and
I mean, Blaze is all over the
Daily
place
Wire?
because Blaze is very decentralized. Like, there's a huge difference. Like,
To me,
I
I think
imagine,
they bring on people that do well. Like they've had people that, I thought they had good podcasts, like, John Miller when he was at Blaze, he had a good podcast, good short form. Lauren Chen had good short form when she was at Blaze. She's no longer with Blaze. I guess she couldn't either get enough viewers to go subscribe to Blaze, or she wasn't that good on the Blaze platform, whereas she's probably much better on YouTube on her own. I don't know. So Blaze to me seems a lot more capitalistic in its pursuit of licensing content.
like, I think if you go again back to Fox News, they probably have a team of producers that are like, here's your news lineup. These are the issues that the audience wants to hear, and it's more top down. Then you go to Daily Wire, which is probably the same kind of thing, where you have a lot of probably the researchers for all their shows are probably along the same lines. If you look at like Walsh, Knowles, Shapiro, they're all probably going to talk the same talking points or talk about the same general set of issues. And again, you have varying degrees of conservatism just within their main like 4 or 5 shows.
Now, Daily
But
Wire, I think, is a lot different because Daily Wire, I think, is substantially to the left of their audience or their
Yes,
target audience.
I would certainly say that with like a
Blaze
Shapiro.
all over the place.
Yeah,
but,
Blaze is all over the place.
But Ben Shapiro is literally an anchor on the movement of opposing Branch Covidianism. He was so slow to get on the right side of the issue.
Right side of history.
The right side of history, as his book would be entitled.
Against the authoritarian movement.
Exactly. So Ben Shapiro, completely not self-aware, and his audience, I think, was to the right of him. And I imagine when he actually got red-pilled on Branch Covidianism,
I don't think
if he ever did.
No, I think he's a fence sitter. So what he'll do is he'll sit on the fence, and then he'll jump right hard as soon as there's like a critical mass of information.
As soon as it's acceptable.
So, yeah, I mean, I kind of like to say with Ben Shapiro, he has splinters in his butt from sitting on the fence for so long. So again, that's his tactic. You can look at what he was saying with Trump impeachment. You can look at what he was saying even on Fauci. I think he came out against Fauci in December of 2020. So that's after,
which is very late.
That's late in the realm of conservative media. That's late.
That's 10 months later than me, or 9 months later than me, for the record. So that he's obviously to the left, and I think he weighs his audience down. Then you got people like Crowder. Where would you say Crowder is? Left or right of his audience? Largest conservative YouTube channel.
It might be on an issue. I mean, I don't know if he's. I mean, I kind of want to say left a little bit as far as the risk he's willing to take or the issues he's willing to talk about, but he's certainly to the right of like a Shapiro. It's just kind of hard because I think he avoids a lot of the tougher issues because he's kind of like the type that wants to avoid YouTube strike, even though he has no strikes now. I think they got off they no longer have any strikes against their channels.
Yeah, because strikes expire.
And I think he got one about a year ago for his voter fraud thing. But so he's it just depends on the issue, because I think sometimes he's lazy with a lot of his content making. Anytime he's just doing rebuttals to like Oliver, The View, or insert leftist here, then it's kind of like you're just treating your audience as if they're dumb. You're rehashing the same talking points that are kind of like PragerU talking points that are low IQ.
I want to comment on this comment. Is like Crowder dressing up as a woman to infiltrate leftist events is gross. I mean, actually, his most recent one, he dressed up as a non-binary. Just true. For the record.
And I mean, you could kind of see that
but actually,
it kind of looked like a bearded woman thing as well.
It looked like he looked like a man dressing up as a woman, calling himself a non-binary. But I actually didn't mind that content that he released recently. It's like he used to do a lot more news gathering, kind of edgy type of things like that. And to me, I don't think he's built to be a Daily Show kind of, and by Daily Show, I mean live responding to, no one likes the CNN thing is so old. So I think,
and that's kind of where I'm at with the answers.
And he needs structure. I think he needs more structure, because he used to be deep dives and then like a vanity or a game segment or something like that, or like infiltrations and stuff like that. It used to be, or Change My Mind, stuff like that. It used to be more structured, but to me, when he got unstructured, it kind of went a little bit downhill. That's just my opinion.
I was a little disappointed in the woman thing, or the fat suit thing, because I mean, that could have came out like last year, like when he was off for July, because that was filmed probably around March or May of 2020, just when they referenced COVID deaths being around 100,000. Again, I think when he does deep dives, like when he's going to actual physical addresses to verify voter ballots, like that was good. That was to the right of like what a lot of other, like Daily Wire's not doing that. But then you have
they could have tell.
Then you have just, I'm going to rebut John Oliver, which is just lazy. And you're just rehashing information. Like, again, sometimes he treats his audience like they're stupid. Sometimes he treats them like he's giving them like actual like content that's, you can't get anywhere else.
I mean,
there's a larger
challenge, spectrum. I think, with a larger show that's definitely a show is like you have to, and this is a challenge that I have to overcome, is that it is a slower media format. Doing video is way slower than doing written. I think that, by working at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, that I manage to do both, and it seems very seamless because, I work odd hours at this. So when I work the odd hours, I can have a story and an article written, ready to go, and hopefully before other like competitors are already talking about this issue. Now, then other stories I just fall behind on. I'm a little slow to the game on because it'll happen during the day. It'll happen like 11 o'clock in the day, and I can't drop everything to work on that story. So there is so when you have a lot of conservative podcasts, they're kind of like a day late on a lot of news stories. But so that does give them a chance to like weigh out like what's the position that I should be taking. There's a little bit of that. There's it's a very intensive industry as far as like keeping up with things in the media goes. So, uh, but again, it's a question that needs to be asked. Like, where does someone stand in position to their audience? But otherwise, next question I want to talk about is PragerU conservatism dead?
I mean, in a generation, sure, officially, but I mean, PragerU is very entry level. I mean, if you just want a basic talking point about how the war on poverty like made things worse, or mass immigration, or even the political divide being mainly the left, pulling the country to the left, liberals going farther left. I mean, yeah, PragerU will kind of deliver that in like a standardized, packaged format, but at the same time, it's low. It's kind of low IQ. It's basic.
I think the problem with PragerU is they ran out of topics.
No, I guess. I mean, it's just
actually where PragerU went downhill was when they brought Candace Owens on. That was the definite. Like they literally had a good video coming out like every Monday or something like that, and then Candace Owens joins their platform and just overnight. And because you're right, PragerU is very good at entry level conservatism. So that kind of leads into my next question: should there be a learning curve for conservatism? Should there be a this is your entry level, and then it gets progressively, and not to use that word, ignore the use of the word
you go
progressively.
down the white supremacy rabbit hole.
Increasingly, no, you increasingly become more based as you get deeper along.
Well, I think that is the natural, you're following the white rabbit, so to speak. I mean, that's naturally what's going to happen. What I noticed is a lot of people might start off more libertarian and then work their way into more of a based paleo conservatism type of path. And again, it's because they like the idea of they start off. If you start off liking the idea of small government, and then then you eventually have to come to the conclusion that small government is an impossibility. Look at the size of our federal government, our national debt. You got to have a big stick, so you have to wield it. So you naturally have to go to conservatism, or you see, hey, we need laws to stop this depravity. This isn't a you come to the idea that the libertarian mindset of small government is an impossibility, and you have to conserve the values that made your society great to begin with. So once you go that, so I would say it starts from a libertarian standpoint, and then you kind of grow. And that's how a lot of Gen Z, that's why they are probably, like, on a viewpoint, the conservatives in Gen Z are probably more conservative than boomer generations.
Or because, even perhaps millennial. Because millennial, you might have more of that edgy libertarian vibe, but Gen Z, you're seeing some more, again, more based cultural conservatives rise up because they're the victims of the feminist agenda.
But but when you have, I guess, your schools teaching on, choose your pronoun day kind of thing, yeah, I mean, it's now countercultural, I guess, to be conservative in many of those spheres. A lot of people, of course, reject the programming, so to speak. So again, I mean, there is a so even though let's say 30%, or 30% or whatever, or 20 to 30% are checking boxes saying they identify as something, the ones that don't are hardcore. So but I do think a lot of it stems from a libertarian kind of starting point, or some kind of quasi-libertarian starting point from a political standpoint.
I mean, I think there's definitely room for a Pepe pipeline, as it was just called a minute ago. But there's room for that. And PragerU can be on the entry level of that, but to what degree should it's kind of like, again, going back to how Christianity and conservatism have so many parallels, where you have so many things that are very entry level Christianity, and a lot of it is either churches that have actual believers as pastors, but they're not really feeding the sheep. They're feeding the sheep baby food, so to speak, as in the feeding them real
Yeah,
meat of
I mean,
what the
this
scripture
is
says. So
Paul is just like spirit. You guys should be eating solid foods, but instead you're still suckling spiritual breast milk.
right. So I think that exists a lot in conservatism, where we got to kind of onboard people to actually understanding what it is and what it means, and the fact that we cannot just be preserved against the current thing. We got to be for something. We got to be for the values that actually made this country great. We got to be for, in large part, what the Bible says.
And the other thing is, like, I mean, back to like spiritual breast milk versus solid foods. I mean, it just goes with not treating your audience like they're idiots, or like you know more than them because you're on a platform. I mean, again, that was my critique with Crowder, is that at times he's just treating his audience like he's dumb, like they're dumb. He has to repeat his talking points over and over again. He's just repeating the same content on a different day. But when you go in depth, then you're actually like helping your audience grow and helping pull them to the right. When you're doing deep dives on certain issues, that's where you really can, you can actually grow a movement instead of just doing whack-a-mole with the latest crazy thing on the left, which, we can do that every day. I mean,
And that's the easiest. That is the lowest thing you can do, is just go on Gravy and see what clips out of cable news are out there, and that's how you know it's a slow news day, is if you're talking about your competitors. Even I will do that on what is a slower news week. I will talk about more Gospel Coalition stuff, because there's always something to talk about. But I'm not trying to out myself here, but this is a very fast-paced week, and I did want to highlight the whole issue of IVF and surrogacy, because that needs to be put out there. But just along the solid food line, Sadie Robertson Huff, very baby food as far as like targeting women and stuff. She's no Ali Stuckey, no matter how much she tries to be or doesn't try to be. But you just see there's no real onboarding or even much of a marketing campaign for conservatism, which PragerU used to be very good at. Like, they used to be very good at trying to red pill people, trying to give people a short presentation on an issue to show you how you've been misled on the entire issue. Like the whole switch between the South, the Republicans and Democrats in the South, and how the South actually went red. Where people are taught that the parties switch sides. Like, people are actually taught that, because the history of the Democrat Party, particularly in the 20th century, is horrendous. So they teach that, they switch sides, but they still claim FDR. So it's kind of this weird thing.
no,
And then
the other thing is, it's no longer like, oh, this is an intellectual debate, or this is actually what happened. It's now more emotions versus uh, logic. And again, I mean, I can write it 1,000 times. You can't out emote the left. You can't be more emotional than them. You can't go. You can't out Satan. I mean, you can't.
And to some degree, you can't debate it either. You just gotta steamroll it, like crush
which is also probably why, like the PragerU type style of, let's just refute this talking point you've heard for so long. It doesn't work anymore, because you probably already won most of the people that will accept that view at this point. So you need to either grow your audience or teach them more
Come back
solid
to
foods.
Thomas's question in a second. But this, another thought. There will always be always need to be entry level stuff. It's okay as long as there's also plenty of meat. And again, there's room for a pathway. There's room for, and some people. There is a natural progression of, hey, I became a conservative. I started watching this. Now I'm watching other things and other things. I've definitely experienced that myself. Uh, Let's go to the question: will conservatives and Christians part ways soon? What do you think is the answer to that question?
I mean, I don't think there's anywhere to go because I mean, you hear it all the time. Oh, we need a third party, and third party's not happening.
It's not going to happen. So let's
So I
just
mean,
get that thought
you
out
gotta
of
kind
the.
of love the one you're with. The question is how many Republicans will be conservatives? How large of a voting bloc um, is it from a percent? But at the same time, if you can't win without the, let's say, 25% voting bloc that is like evangelical or even just right wing Catholic, if you can't win without that base, then that base, that 25% has the power.
We should be
So
wielding that power, and to a large degree, I think we're going to win. I think we can actually win the conservative movement.
I mean, keep in mind, Mitt Romney lost or won independence but lost the election. So I mean, when
There is
they
no
can't
room.
win without it.
Yeah, there really isn't room for conservatism to exist without Christians. First of all, because look at any other uh, English speaking country, they have a conservative party that's departed from Christ, and it does not work. You look at Canada, they have 5 left wing parties vying for political power. I forget what the situation was in Australia. There's more amenable options, I believe, there than in Canada. And then in the UK, where you don't really have a right wing party in the UK either, because if Boris Johnson is right wing and he's a flat out terror,
I mean,
not
he's like
tyrant.
A Massachusetts Republican.
Yeah, at best. On a good day, he's Massachusetts Republican that actually loves his country, unlike Mitt Romney.
I mean, generally speaking, I would say like in order to really be conservative, you either have to be a Bible believing Christian, or you have to at least at the very least nominally agree with the Bible. Like from a political standpoint, you have to nominally agree with these biblical talking points. Otherwise, you're just like a neoconservative, which neoconservatism is. Some people
We
describe
can
it as
take
class.
America and push it somewhere else.
Oh, class.
Patrick Starr.
Oh, yeah, invade countries, but
Yeah, we can
it's
put
also kind
America
of
in
the idea that
Iraq.
you can separate the religious aspect from the political aspect, and that's what a lot of neoconservatives did. So they
Well, that's
wanted to
what
separate.
neoconservatism's based on, is separating culture from the founding principles of the nation. They separate that from cultural principles of the founding generation. So they said, okay, if we just establish these checks and balances and stuff like that, everything's going to go all right. And no, it doesn't work like that.
So I would
Uh,
say like the two are almost inseparable. Otherwise, again, I would say conservatism is based on Christianity. Neoconservatism removes Christianity, and then there's just classical liberals. So I mean,
So I guess the way I would answer it is I think Christians can win, because I do believe, conservatives are willing to have this argument. And I believe we're winning the argument because this trans issue is really exposing who the frauds are. Like, there is no room to, you can get on Fox News, but, again, Fox News is demographically over. Uh, we're not going to tolerate people calling dudes in dresses women, because we're not homosexuals. So that's going to be, I think that's the issue. This is the issue where we're going to actually start taking back the issue. And then we're going to say, no, the whole support of gay marriage has led to this. And we're going to start winding it back slowly, is what I think might actually happen. The question is, will there be enough of us to actually make much of a difference? But I think, and whether we can actually effectively win primary elections within the Republican Party. I think that's actually the bigger challenge in actually winning the base. Because I think, Christians and Conservative Inc. are vying for the base of the Republican Party.
Yeah, I
And I
mean,
think Christians are winning that argument. We're winning that argument, but can we
even
actually turn that winning of the argument to now we're winning elections at the primary level? Because the primary elections are more important than the general elections, because primary elections determine who's going to win and who's going to compete in the general election. So the primary elections, that's where those are the elections that matter. Can we win at the primary election level? And we get destroyed more often than not at the primary level.
well, the
So I
other
think
thing is
that's the
even the
question.
frauds have to pretend and pander to Christianity. Again, that's how you end up with an Asa Hutchinson.
But
Um,
we want them to pander to us
but yeah, they are. And then of
until
course,
the
obviously
trans
some.
issue.
Yeah, obviously you have a couple like oddball, your Hogans and the ones that are just moderates and squishes. But for
Okay.
the most part, they at least pander to the Christianity aspect, even if they don't uphold it.
No, I'm just optimistic. So, just to read some comments, theonomy, anyone. So, if we want to talk about an end goal of conservatism, should theonomy be that end goal? You're familiar with that term, right?
I mean, vaguely, I understand there's like 5 or 6. There's several
Different schools
versions
of
of
theonomy, yes.
of theonomy, but at the
I
end of
wouldn't
the
really call
day,
myself a theonomist,
I mean, at
even
the
though
end
I
of the
probably
day,
agree with them a lot. I don't apply the label to myself.
I mean, if you just consider that all laws are designed to legislate morality and regulate behavior and promote desired behaviors, that's going to happen regardless of whether it's Christianity, Islam, secular atheism, or even just progressivism.
But yeah, I think we should have the theonomy debate. But I don't consider myself a theonomist, even though I probably agree with the theonomist on several different issues. There's like a premise. I'm not sure you can. I'm not sure. Like a lot of theonomists are against the idea of having incarceration and switching solely to a restitution based system, which I don't necessarily think is biblical. I mean, there are jails in the Bible. I mean, not necessarily in the law, but you got to have a holding cell for people that represent a substantial danger to those around them if they're just allowed to, if they're not financially motivated enough to pay restitution. And we don't have a slave system either for people to work off debt or anything like that. So I'm not,
Nope, did away with that.
yeah, we did away with that. So I don't necessarily see that.
Or a penal colony.
Or a penal colony. That'd be nice to have a penal colony. DeSantis will win primary. Now, again, DeSantis won his primary in Florida in 2018, which is a very critical primary to win because the Republican Party put so much money into Florida. They invested heavily into the Florida races, not just because they wanted their homeboy Rick Scott to be in the Senate, but um, they did were more invested in Florida than any other state,
I mean,
and it
I think
wasn't close.
DeSantis had $55 million in his gubernatorial campaign. So
I mean,
it was an
I know I'm just
expensive
talking about the
race.
party race. The like the Democrats were putting so much money into disproportionately less winnable seats in 2018, whereas the Republicans were investing heavily in Florida. But as far as the obviously, there's the other question about the 2024 election, and again, should we still support Trump in 2024 if he runs?
I mean,
There's multiple questions.
that's probably an individual decision. I mean, at this point, he did such a bad job. I mean, I don't think his record is all that good. If you think about it, he tanked the economy, so you can't claim it's a good economy when the economy at the end of your term is bad. His New Deal levels of spending, I call it like CARES Act and all that Trump's New Deal because his New Deal with America. Let's suspend evictions. Let's Operation Warp Speed. Let's spend. Let's pay people to be unemployed and make it more profitable to be unemployed. If you make under $20 an hour, I think that was the cutoff. So it was 20, maybe 21. If you made that or less, unemployment was more profitable under, you know, Trump's New Deal spending when you expanded the unemployment benefits. So I mean, a lot. And again, I don't think he was that strong on China. He didn't really take a hard stand with Hong Kong. He made trade deals with China instead of like hardlining it. Again, I don't think his record is all that, and I think someone like a DeSantis could exploit that. by running harder right.
So here's the thing about a primary in 2024. You have the normies and then you have the activists, right? The activists want DeSantis.
Yes.
The normies will want Trump.
And
there are more normies than activists.
That's why I call it a Trump pill, so to speak.
That is why, like in Virginia, in order to oust the Rhino congressman, the Republican Party ousted him in a caucus, or they ousted him at a party level. They didn't let it go to a primary. They ousted a sitting congressman without a primary, because they did not let it go to a primary. And that's a good system to have, in my opinion. Let the activists have more of a say. Like caucus systems are a lot better than primary system because of the normies are just such low info voters. So I think that's going to be the deciding factor. The other thing is infrastructure. If DeSantis runs against Trump, who will actually join his campaign? Because let's face it, all the first round draft picks are going on Trump's team. I mean, how many people are going to be that ambitious enough to work for DeSantis, knowing that he is a heavy underdog?
I mean, obviously there are people out there. Trump certainly burned a lot of bridges. So, and he's not very good at his staffing decisions. So there's a lot of talent that could easily find its way.
I think there's a lot of people that don't want Trump to be the president in 2024. I think that number of people is very large. Again, I run in the activist circles, and we're not really excited about Trump in 2024. We're not. The other thing is, the other case that needs to be made is, what about 2028? Why are we running a president that we're going to have the same conversation all over again in 4 years of who gets to be their replacement? So I don't like
Democrats are going to be doing that pretty soon with
exactly.
So.
Yeah, maybe Joe Biden has a few more years left in him, because he's definitely lived a lot longer than a lot of people thought he would. And considering they keep him on ice, who knows? He could actually be the candidate in 2024. And then, again, who knows at this point? But as for Trump, like, here's the advantage for DeSantis, though. More activists vote. The activists are more guaranteed to vote than the normies. That's the key.
Well,
and
other
the debates matter. Trump can't.
Iowa
can't cower out of every single debate. He cannot cower out of those initial debates. He cowered out of debates after, he didn't want to be on a 1-on-1 with Cruz. He got torched doing that. So, he didn't want to do that. So he cannot do that if it's Trump and DeSantis in July of what would it be, 2023. He cannot be in July of 2023 cowering from debates, or August, September, November. He cannot be cowering out of debates for several months. It'll be seen as insulting. It'll be seen as losing. He got away with that in 2016, but he will not get away with that in 2023 and 2024. So
the other thing is
your questions.
The momentum is the other factor, because again, it's not like everyone votes the same day. It's Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada. So you have a lot of individual states. So if like a DeSantis pulls off an Iowa caucus, then New Hampshire is a little bit more competitive. Probably Trump wins Vegas again.
There's no way DeSantis is winning New Hampshire. No way. He could win, and then Florida would even be up for grabs. Florida's not even guaranteed to swing for DeSantis. I think it would.
I think it would. I think it would hard.
But I don't think it would hard. Trump dominated Florida against the Florida.
If it's winner take
candidate.
all, then
and then like Texas won. Cruz won Texas in 2016, but not enough to carry winner takes all. Trump dominated Florida against Marco Rubio, unsurprisingly.
Yeah. I mean, Rubio was dead dead man walking at that point.
He had the best third place finish of anyone in any primary in Iowa. I can't believe he lost Florida. And of course, Marco Rubio is full neocon. When he came out in support of bombing Libya, you just knew he wasn't presidential material. So that's just all I gotta say about him.
To his credit, he did pull off the best presidential debate moment in American history, where he says Donald Trump has small hands, and Donald Trump's like, believe me, it's not a problem.
That was the
I was looking down. I looked up when he said, "I'm like, wow, he just said that." That was, again, best moment in Marco Rubio's career, and it was at his expense.
That it was. So definitely submit your questions to the chat or in the chat, because again, 2024 is what all this is pointing to. Obviously, there's a lot of election in 2022 we still need to hash out because, again, primaries are the most important elections, people. Primaries. And you got to think local as well. Certainly as a local candidate in my own primary. And, that's not an easy prospect either because we're taking on the Republican machine here. So the Republican machine is everywhere, and you just got to be on alert for that because, the rhinos exist everywhere. They're not an endangered species, despite, we just got to poach them out of existence. So, and then 2028 is, again, we need that argument of we can't just be thinking about the next election, and that's one of the biggest mistakes of conservatism. We need actual substantive cultural terraforming is the term I use. We need to terraform the culture. So if Roe v. Wade is overturned, that will terraform the culture. That will create a more pro-life culture overnight in the same way that the Obergefell decision made our country accept homosexuality in bulk overnight. And I mean overnight.
I'm just curious what a John Roberts Supreme Court would even do on Roe v. Wade.
Not decide, not take up the case. That's what a John Roberts court would do.
They'll punt even though, they're being asked the question. So again, I think they'll let the Mississippi law stand. I don't know what beyond that they'll do. But then you'll have the Texas laws that'll.
Here's a flash question for you. Lindsey Graham, is he voting for Ketanji Brown Jackson or whatever her name is? The pedophile.
I feel like he probably would have voted for her in her initial confirmation, but
is Lindsey Graham voting for Ketanji?
It's a good flip of the coin, but I would.
It really is. Like, does he have
that?
Like, initially, I would have said yes, definitely. But here's the thing about Lindsey, because Lindsey Graham is like, I believe he's the only sitting U.S. senator that voted, because a lot of the senators either voted against or are no longer in office. He's the only sitting U.S. senator that voted for both Sotomayor and Kagan. So when he says that we would, like, he's a liar when he says he wouldn't have voted for Merrick Garland. He absolutely would have. But has he built such a reputation for going so hard for Brett Kavanaugh that he is actually going to maintain that posturing for Ketanji?
I mean, I guess part of why it's a flip of the coin is because, he knows how to be a blowhard, pun intended, on like critical issues that Fox News is talking about. But, I don't know what kind of coverage Obama's SCOTUS appointments were getting at the time. I mean, again, I was middle school, high school, so it kind of just flew under the radar that there's even new Supreme Court judges being appointed.
I mean, in general, a disappointing trend is that more Republicans vote for Democrat justices than the reverse.
Well, the other thing with Lindsey Graham is he'll gladly vote for these people on the appellate level, but the Supreme Court level, whoa, a lot more exposure. So
but he voted for Kagan and Sotomayor then, like.
But I don't know what kind of exposure those justices were getting at their nomination, and obviously they're a lot more competently packaged than the current one. So I mean, again, when you're contra talking point is pedophile sympathizer. It serves quite well. I mean, again, I can honestly see him going no, just because there's a huge spotlight, and roaches don't like the light. So. But again, if no one was talking about this, he'd probably vote yes.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most accurate answer. But I'd still lay the odds, 52% chance he votes yes.
I don't
I
think
think
it'll
it's
be a
I think it's
50-50
very
vote.
I mean, if they have enough votes, because obviously Romney's probably going to vote yes. Suzanne Collins is pro-abortion. She's probably also voting yes. And then who's the
Possibly
other one?
Murkowski.
Lisa Murkowski.
Maybe not with her because going to a primary, but
no, she's retiring, isn't she? I don't know. So they already have 3 yes votes on the Republican side. So I don't.
You hear Manchin talk, but I don't buy it right now.
Manchin's gonna vote yes because they already have the Republican votes and they only need 51. So the way I see it, Lindsey Graham will probably go with the majority or use this to say that he's not as bad as Mitt Romney, even though his Senate record is terrible. He's definitely one of the worst Republican senators out there. But, because he went hard for Brett Kavanaugh, he got a giant pass that he did not deserve. So, anyway, I think that kind of concludes our discussion. I just want to throw that flash question out there because, again, we're answering the questions like, what is the future of conservatism? You think that the conservatives can't win without the Christians. I think the Christians will win the argument, but can we win the primaries? That is, to me, the challenge. But anyway, let them know where they can find you. I do have your linked Gab profile in the description so people can follow you there. I put that in there.
Pretty much it.
But also, Mitch McConnell too smart to be primaried out. Agreed, but people are too dumb to vote him out.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how good the candidate is because in 2014 when they ran a primary candidate against Mitch McConnell, that primary candidate would go on to be governor of the state. So it's not like they threw a weak candidate against Mitch McConnell. People just didn't pay attention. And Fox News was pro McConnell. And so anyway, if you want to
go
support,
to Ohio with Blystone.
Blystone, that we'll see that again in these upcoming primary cycles. So anyway, this is the Evangelical Dark Web. And if you want to support the Evangelical Dark Web, we have a Patreon-like system, not Patreon because Patreon is liberal trash and they censor people. So we don't use Patreon, but we built our own at evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. That is linked in the description below, and you can support us over there. Otherwise, the least you can do is like and subscribe and perhaps share. Have a blessed day. Love the chat. And then we will catch you on the next one.